Dr. Burgess for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got a number of questions on the LNG pause, but I'm going to submit those for writing because I want clarity in the answers. I do want to point out that 4 years ago, literally 4 years ago right now, the cost or the price of crude oil was pretty low. And there was an effort, a bipartisan effort in this committee, myself, Representative Fletcher from Houston, my Senator Cornyn, Senator Hoeven from North Dakota, to suggest that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve could be topped off while the cost of crude oil was at historic lows. This was declined by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate, and was not accomplished. However, then 2 years later, we saw a massive sell-off in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, not because of a national emergency, but because of a perceived political emergency by the administration. They were worried about their performance in the midterm elections. So they bought down the price at the pump for consumers after they had driven it up with energy policies instituted by this administration. And to my observation now, there really isn't an attempt to put those barrels back in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Is that correct?
No, let me clarify for you. I think there's a couple of things that you said that are inaccurate. Number one, the reason why the president ordered the sale of 180 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was because Russia invaded Ukraine. And there was a crunch, a complete collapse of the ability to access oil on a global market.
Because we're going to differ on geopolitical events. Russia invaded Ukraine because of the collapse of the administration's policy in Afghanistan and made Ukraine an attractive target. But nevertheless, there was an effort by the administration to reduce the price at the pump. And again, the emergency really didn't exist then. The emergency, though, may be right on our doorstep with how dangerous the world has become. And we are less in a position to respond to now a real and acute emergency because of the fact you drew it down in 2022.
First, we have the largest strategic petroleum reserve still in the world. The president ordered the 180 million barrels sold because of a global emergency. There was a global effort to put more supply on the market in addition to what the United States did. We have, in fact, begun a strategy of refilling. And I will say that Congress has ordered more barrels to be released from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve through congressional mandatory sales for budget purposes than the president did. Thank you to Congress for canceling 140 million of those ordered mandatory sales, but there's another 100 million that we are going to have to sell because of congressional action as well.
Do you agree or disagree that the world is a dangerous place today?
Absolutely.
More so perhaps at any time in my lifetime, and I lived through the Cold War. I cannot remember a time where world events may be as tenuous as they are today. A simple miscalculation on someone's part could really put us in a position where the United States is in grave danger. So I want us to continue to focus on filling that Strategic Petroleum Reserve. To that, the state of Texas is willing to contribute, and we are always willing to step up. Let me ask you one other question before I run out of time. The all-in part of the president's budget for Department of Energy is roughly what? What is the dollar figure?
The all-in?
Yeah, how much money does the president want?
51.4 billion.
Okay. I'm also on the budget committee and am acutely aware of the fact that we are in a budget crisis in this country. Our deficits are at levels that are unsustainable. The $51 billion requested in the budget, does that take into an account the cost of borrowing that money and the debt service on that money? Are there constant value dollars that are put into this calculation?
I am certain that it does because it's part of the president's overall budget.
I don't think that it does. I think we are being asked to spend $51 billion that is going to have to come from somewhere else. It's not being offset. Like, for example, why not take it from some of the Green New Deal provisions that were included in the Inflation Reduction Act so that we don't have to borrow this money from China and then our children and grandchildren pay it back?
Well, Congress has directed us to be able to spend the funding to be able to address climate change so that we can be more energy secure as a nation, and that's what we are doing. We're fulfilling Congress's obligations.
Thank you for elucidating that a strategic change in policy is going to be necessary. I hope the country delivers in November. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr.